Hi everyone, Cotswolds Girl here. How are you? I'm back and I am going to be talking today about something that has been a very interesting journey for me over the past couple of weeks. And I think that there are sort of lessons to be taken from it, and obviously I can't sort of give away too many details or anything. But what I have sort of really discovered, and it's like a work lesson, it's a life lesson. And it was just very poignant because, again, being an Aussie and being abroad, it's interesting how, I guess, without sort of putting a too fine a point on it, how much I have lost, I think, probably more than anything. I think how I sort of lost that real Aussiness, and I know that's not a word and it sounds ridiculous, but I guess being an Aussie, it's one of these things that when you're abroad, you feel like when you come across any other Aussies, regardless of whether they're from your hometown, from your state or whatever, it's almost like you're catching up. You meet someone and they're like family. It's like a community that you never thought existed, a family and friends that you never thought you'd have. And this week has been a really, really interesting thing for me because as I went across onto the continent and did some filming, with a bunch of Aussies that I'd never met before, that both, people from the continent and from Australia and from every far-flung place, putting everyone together and never having met anyone before, and everyone's in the same position. It's really funny how all of a sudden, within 5 or 10 minutes, everyone's your friend and you talk about common things and common places. And by the end of the week, I literally walked away with so many friends and a brand new network of people that I never thought I'd have, just purely because we bonded about being an Aussie. And what I sort of took from that is that if you are put into a situation where, it's sort of out of your comfort zone and you're not, you don't know anyone, you're not comfortable, but you're all there for a common purpose. People come together for that common purpose. And we certainly did that. And once you've got that sort of thing in common, once you've got that one thing that you can all relate to, anything can happen from there. And honestly, the most beautiful friendships have been made, best connections, purely from being put into a situation where everyone has a common goal, you're there for a common purpose. And as a recruiter, I took that away from that last week, and I thought about that. And for the teams that I recruit for, it's absolutely true. If everyone's there with a common purpose, with a common mindset, with a common goal, honestly, you can achieve anything, regardless of, whether, where you're from or, what creed or whatever you are. If you're pulling together for a common purpose, honestly, the achievements that you can make are unbelievable. So for me now, I'm taking away a real sense of energy and a real sense of not only, pulling together for a common purpose, but I've got brand new friends, and, the ability to be able to, once you put your mind to it, achieve pretty much anything you want to. So, I've met some wonderful new YouTubers. I've met some wonderful content creators. I've met some business associates. I've made connections from my hometown that I never thought I would make. Shout out to Adelaide. But it's just been a complete eye-opener for me. And it's also opened my mind to doing a bit more of that sort of work, and building this YouTube channel to be able to facilitate that. So look, it's been a really interesting journey over the past week. I've certainly found out a lot about myself. As much as I thought I was an extrovert, when you're put in a room with 100 other extroverts, it sort of becomes very clear very quickly that perhaps I'm not as out there as I thought I was. But saying that, I learnt a lot about myself and, the things that I need to sort of refuel. So being in that sort of environment, I do now really value my alone time, and sort of when I withdraw and I can go and read a book or do my own thing or just get my own headspace, I really appreciate that now. Whereas before I just sort of thought I was sort of being antisocial, but that's actually me recharging my batteries. So that's at least something that, again, I've sort of taken away from this whole experience, which is really, really good. And also, the ability to also think that sort of being, over here in the UK, it can be very separatist a little bit, especially if you're an expat. And in Australia, everything is just so far away. So if you say that that you live 2 hours away from Melbourne, that's almost commutable on a daily basis. Whereas in the UK, you say, I live a couple of hours away. It's almost an insurmountable challenge. Whereas now that I've got friends that might live 2 hours away from where I live, here in the Cotswolds, it's not that far, and it means that, it just opens up a whole new circle of friends. So, that's another thing as well, just to sort of get your mindset around, actually, things aren't so insurmountable. It's not that far away. It's not so much of a challenge if you don't want to make it one. So look, it's been a very interesting week. The Cotswolds Boy and I are going to be starting our podcast next week. It's the end of the Formula One season this coming weekend, and the championship all comes down to this last race. We have some very definite thoughts on how that's going to play out. We've heard a lot of rumours about McLaren team orders and, other teams helping teams, get extra points and things. I'm a McLaren fan. I'm an Oscar Piastri fan. So I've absolutely got my views on all of this. So we will be talking about that coming up. And it's also the Ashes second test, of which it's a day-night test. I'm not a big fan of pink ball cricket, I'm not going to lie, but it's panning out to be a very interesting test match. So we'll be covering all of that in our podcast coming up over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. I will be posting it on here. But I'd like to sort of hear your thoughts as well. Obviously, I've sort of dabbled in a little bit of the history side of things. I want to continue with that. I'm also going to be giving you an update on our fertility journey and how that's all sort of progressing. But yeah, look, I'd love to hear any topics that you think would be of interest to you. Probably because, we've sort of been there, I've probably experienced it, and we can have a bit of a chat about it. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.